What do you call talent? A man who has a beautiful voice. A man who paints. A good football player. What is talent? Talent is an action performed by a human being, recognized as creative. If one person can paint better than another, and a different person can learn to paint better than the first, then talent represents a person's skill level. A person can paint beautifully, another can sing extraordinarily, and another can dance phenomenally. But to define the painting as being beautiful, a voice as melodic, and a dance routine as rhythmic, you must relate to something, and this something is the culture, the environment in which you were born. Let's analyze this well-known painting, Mona Lisa. For many it's greatness, and art, something magnificent, splendor and value. But why? Is the painting itself extraordinary? Was the year it was made in significant? Because of its impact in the art world? Because of the author? What gives value to this painting? If you have not heard about this picture, and you see it for the first time as an image on your computer, what would your opinion have been, without any cultural or environmental influence? Think. The same with the voice. A deaf man would not appreciate this talent not knowing the effect. He wouldn't be able to appreciate it like you do. The same that the dog may be upset by those sounds, because he has softer hearing. Talent is defined by culture and represents a level of skill, and the ability that creates the talent is subjective.
Well, people have a name for things. If they see a child draw pretty pictures right away, they think the child is gifted. Because that means I haven't the slightest idea how a 6-year-old can draw a profile of a human being that looks so accurate. That's what they're saying when they say he's gifted. I have no idea of how that occurs. When a fish migrates thousands of miles to the spawning grounds, without mother fish opening up a map of the world, showing the fish how to get to the spawning grounds, they invented a word for that, instinct. It means I haven't the slightest idea of how these fish do that. Instinct is a dead word. Noise tells us nothing. But a word that says, I'm going to try to find out how it is that fish can do that. So they study the magnetic currents under the Gulf Stream, which the fish follow. Once you begin to know that birds can follow Earth's magnetic currents, because if you strap a small magnet to a bird's head, he doesn't migrate, becomes confused. So it was called years ago a mechanistic point of view, and people hated that word. Mechanistic? I'm not a machine. I'm flesh and blood. I'm a thinking, feeling. They love that, and they moved away from the mechanistic point of view, which hurt society no end. It's a mechanistic point of view. All that it says is, look, you can't roll your eyes to the right unless there's a muscle and the nerve cells that feed that muscle. You can't twist your arm unless muscles run in that direction. That's all that a mechanistic point of view stated, that nothing occurs. The mechanist also stated this, that nothing is self-activating. That's the most difficult thing for people to grasp. Trying to simplify that, a sailboat cannot sail. It is moved by the wind. A plant cannot grow. All that's nonsense. Still exists today. A plant requires warmth, temperature, moisture, gravity. All of those things are, although you don't see the connection, they're all connected. That living beings do not acquire knowledge or information through ethereal means. They acquire it by banging their head against a wall, slipping on ice, then they design anti-slip systems. First you have to slip on the ice. No government, to my knowledge, ever anticipated the future and said, this is the direction we're headed in, let's prepare for social change. No, they try to keep things as they are.
Everybody can be an artist, Leonardo da Vinci. It's not an inborn gift. This is a myth perpetuated by people who don't understand what it is to be creative. They don't understand the conditioning or the type of experience that makes a creative person. Creativity is nothing more than taking known elements and putting them together in unique ways. Look at all your stories, your writing, your books. They're all the same story, different characters. All your television soap operas are always the same story put together in little different patterns. They're not that original. And even though you hear of a guy like Leonardo da Vinci, you think, my God, he was ahead of his time. No, he wasn't. The people he associated with talked of gears and levers. You don't have that in your school book. That's what's missing. They think that Leonardo da Vinci came up with all the ideas himself. That's not true. The people he associated with talked about different things. The kind of friends he had were different than normal people. Normal means screwed up by their society.
I wish I brought some of that with me, some of the memory medals. But how did a man think of it? He didn't. There was a Swede that mixed different metals together. He was just trying to make metals stronger. And he used titanium and nickel, called nickel and titanium. And he bent it to see how strong it was, like the letter U. And he put it on a table near a heat lamp. And when he came back, it was straight again. In France, a guy made a wing 3 feet long and strapped it on his back. And he climbed up the top of the Eiffel Tower, and he jumped off, and he died. And his brother-in-law wrote, "Make wings larger next time." Where do you think it comes from? Nobody can know how to build an airplane right away. Edison said he went through 7,000 different things before he could get a filament for the lamp. Nobody really invented anything. It was all discovery. The things you're brought up to like, movie stars, soap operas on TV, all crap. None of them teach you anything. If you were raised in Australia, you say, "How are you, mate?" And if you were raised in the deep south in America by uneducated people, you might say, "I'm gonna get me a nigger and I'm gonna kick his ass in." Is that you speaking or the environment affecting you? You talk of individuality like there is such a thing. There isn't. If you were an individual, you couldn't talk to anybody. They wouldn't know what the hell you're talking about. You're very much like other people. Your question is not new. I've never heard a new question in years because we're so much alike.
Dancing evolved in a tribe that was just about to go to war, and they were tense. And if they danced around the fire and yelled and screamed, they danced around the fire and relieved that tension before they got into battle. Soldiers, when they march, sing. The reason for that is to take their mind off, how's my wife doing? I wonder what's happening at home with my kids. But if you got them singing, like the Marines sing, blood makes the grass grow. Take their attention away from home, you're better off. And if you can involve them in little games, in dancing, in sports, that takes the attention away from social problems. Boxing, wrestling, sports, in the future, there'll be nobody punching one another because that damages the brain. And nobody seems to give a damn except that they like that. A ballet dancer in later years will have a lot of trouble with her ankles. You know, what they do is not good for the body, and they rehearse long hours, and they damage their body, because we have emphasized ballet. We like it. Now, if you consider ancient Rome, where they used to feed Christians to lions, and kids would say to their daddy, "Can we come next week to see Christians being fed to lions?" And daddy might say, "If you behave yourself." Now, these kids are not mentally ill. They're brought up in a society that's warped. Our society is warped. It's hard for me to talk about the things that normal people have come to like. Do you understand what I mean? It's like walking over to an Indian and say, "What are you dancing around the fire with feathered hat?" That's ridiculous. The Indian doesn't say, "Gee, thanks for telling me that. I never thought of it that way." Don't you see? People can no longer step out of their culture by a lecture or a single movie. It just takes a long time to learn where these things came from, how they emerged, how they evolved. Now, putting a decoration through your ear, piercing your ear, and let something dangle from your ear. If a person came from another planet, if you had a watch on your wrist, he might say, "What is that?" You say, "Well, I can't keep accurate time where this machine helps me keep time." And you say, "Well, what's those glass things in front of your eyes, what appear to be transparent?" You say, "Well, I'm losing my eyesight, or I can't read, or I can't see things far away, and this helps me." "Well, what's that thing hanging from your wife's ears?" "Oh, that's decoration, that's ornament." "Yes, but what is it?" You see what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And it's the same as a primitive person painting their face in different colors to keep evil spirits away. Now, they say that with a straight face.
Yeah.
You can't tell them what they're doing is primitive, backward.
You know, being an individual is not how many rings you have through your nose or what color your hair is or if your hair stands straight up or, you know, the clothing that you wear. It's how you think. And you have to think about what all these different fashions are for, too. A lot of people make a lot of money by changing fashions every year. So it's good to consider the motive of all these things.
Same with automobiles. They hang a tail fin on or a strip of chromium. This is all artificial. I would spend all that money on safety devices instead of a tail fin. Like if you build a monument to veterans, the veterans think that's a good thing. I think it's a terrible idea. If you have any surplus money for monuments, give it to the Veterans Hospital and build MRI machines and X-ray machines. Build what is needed in the hospital to help veterans, not a monument.
You know, in the old days, you didn't have cameras and things like that, so people painted portraits of one another, and they were pretty accurate, and they were pretty good at one time. But today we have the camera. We can even do X-rays right through people, too, if you want to see what they look like. But you don't need people to draw portraits of them anymore. The camera does a better job in many instances.
So you're
But you
saying
can't
that...
superimpose that because people are brought up with art appreciation. There's a lot of parasitic beliefs we have that will vanish in the future. I don't expect people to turn around at one of my lectures, but I do hope they'll think about it.
You're saying to a degree at somewhat that they're irrelevant, but yet you decide that in the future there are still going to be centers with cameras and musical instruments and all the equipment that someone would need to perform these sort of visual and
Yes, that's true.
So,
That's during the transition.
Oh, during the transition.
Yes, you need all those things as normal people, so-called normal. A normal Nazi accepts a Nazi system. A normal Frenchman accepts France. A normal headhunter accepts headhunting.
So you're saying eventually we won't need those centers anymore.
We will have new forms, new art forms. I'm using the word art because that's what people associate it with.
Okay.
But in the future, we'll have new art forms. I'll tell you a little bit about what that means. New art forms means that furniture will not be designed by artists or designers. Furniture will be designed by anatomists and physiologists to conform with the human body. As you lean forward, the chair helps you get out. The chair adjusts itself to the pressures rather than you moving on a chair all the time to change the pressure points. The chair will move. That's what I mean by anatomist. Dinnerware will be designed by people that study the physiological shape of the human body, and the forks and knives will be designed to best accommodate human attributes. Art was a great thing 100 years ago, where people didn't have any ideas at all, so they just made, like a lot of people, buy a Kennedy rocker. It's the most uncomfortable chair in the world, the Kennedy rocker. But Kennedy had one, and he was an important man, so people do things unsane. Unsane means not the best way for the human body. It's going to take a lot of movies, a lot of education. You can't practice medicine without going to a medical environment. First, you have to go to medical school. If you want to be an engineer, you have to go to engineering school. You have to go to an engineering environment. We are not brought up that way today. So we have thousands of problems and generate more problems as we invent more and more laws. Laws do not deal with problems. They're attempts at a quick fix, but they don't deal with the problem. We have to eradicate the conditions that produce serial killers. In the future, I think all this was transitional, the golf courses, the tennis courts. That's all transitional. You can't suddenly put a new society down and outlaw the patterns that people have been conditioned to.
Yeah.
They have to outgrow that through knowledge and give it up.
Yeah, there'd be churches in the city too. You can't ban anything, otherwise it goes underground. It doesn't work.
Think about how you perceive the world through your senses, how you hear, you see, how you move your muscles, how you are an environmental creation, how easily you can be influenced. Think of the atoms and the greatness of the universe. Now, rethink talent. Talent is a subjective beauty. Let's enjoy it without transforming it into a scale of values or a competition.